Hello, and welcome to the Postpartum Years podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mary Ellen Cramp. I am a physical therapist and a pelvic health specialist. Joining me today is Amanda Forsman. She is an occupational therapist, and she had two very, very different birth experiences that I think would be very interesting to share. So, welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Amanda, why don't you tell us about the first birth experience? You can tell us about the pregnancy, like anything significant along those lines.
Yeah. So my son is now 13 years old. And while I was pregnant, everything was going as planned. It was a surprise gender, so that was fun. When I was about 41 weeks, so I was delayed, I had like higher blood pressure. So they wanted to not wait to be medically induced the next day. They're like, just go to the hospital now. So then I had the Cervidil, like the cervix softening, and then I had Pitocin the next morning. And I was just kind of following whatever the doctor said. I was like, here's my body. Let's get this child out and have everything be safe and whatnot. So I didn't really know that I could advocate and do things differently. So that was something you learn as you go. And I pushed for an hour and a half, and then they were about to cut me, and I said no way. And I also got an epidural, so that I could still feel a lot of pressure, and I was nervous throughout that whole thing, but you don't really know what to do because it's your first child, so you just follow what they say. And then they were just about to cut me, and I was like, no. And so I pushed him out, and he was healthy. I was healthy. But then 2 years down the road, I actually met someone that was going to Mary Ellen, and she lived very far. And Mary Ellen actually lived in the town that I lived in. And my friend was telling me how she goes to a pelvic floor PT. And I was like, oh, what? Tell me more. And she was like, yeah, she helps with different things. And at the time, I thought I was just going to live because I had been for the past 2 years with uh, urinary incontinence when I would sneeze or run or jump or different things. I thought that that's just my life because I had a third-degree tear with my child, probably because I was bearing down so hard and trying to push him out at the last second. And I had a very hard time postpartum because that third-degree tear was not healing well. It was very sore. I actually got an infection. I got mastitis because he was not a good breastfeeder. Like, it was just a lot. I think it took me a couple years to be ready for another one. But thank goodness I heard about Mary Ellen exactly when I did. So my son was about 2 years, and I saw her 2 times, and she fixed my urinary incontinence that fast. I think I had separated abs as well, that she kind of
Mhm.
like myofascial back in place, and my body felt so great. So I was so thankful. I started telling everyone about pelvic floor
She
PT.
did. She totally did.
I built her caseload. I couldn't even get in. No, I'm just kidding. But then we decided that we wanted to have another child. This was like, months to a year later. And we were trying and it was not working. So I went back to Mary Ellen and I was telling her, we're trying to have another child. And she looked at my uterus, and as it had contracted back from my first child, it was like to the left side or something. It wasn't in the middle of my body. So she myofascialed it back to the middle. And that next month, we got pregnant. And I was like, it was all you. You did this. Thank you. So just simple things like that. I think it took us like 6 months, and then I saw her, and then it was immediate. So that was so exciting. So I vowed to myself that the second child pregnancy, I was going to do things everything different. I went to a different OB that was okay with me having a doula and being in different positions. I didn't want to be laying on my back. I didn't want an epidural because I had a lot of painful recovery and my back was really sore. Just everything. I was not taking the like Motrin like they tell you. I was not taking the stool softener like they tell you. So the second time around, I was like, I'm going to do everything different. I went to acupuncture throughout my whole pregnancy because my second child was also like late, past 40 weeks. So acupuncture helped induce me. And I also saw Mary Ellen throughout because my second child is higher tone. She's also bigger. So I felt like I was in a little bit more uncomfortableness. So Mary Ellen kind of helped with positioning of the baby and like also my own body. But then towards the end, was it like 32 weeks we started, and you helped myofascial my scar so then I wouldn't tear along that same spot. But then also the like prepping for delivery, like a vaginal delivery with as smooth as possible and as less tearing as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I got a doula. So that was kind of like an investment. It's equal to the amount that you would pay for an epidural, but that was well worth it because I learned different things. And I was eating dates at the end and all the things, like the natural things. Um, so yeah, I went into, instead of being medically induced like my first child, my second child was, I did the acupuncture and that worked. I went into labor within 24 hours. And luckily, I had biometric pressure because I live in Florida and a tropical storm was coming. So that helped get her out as well. But I remember I started having consistent contractions. Again, I never felt natural contractions, natural anything, because I had that Pitocin or Cervidil type of induction. And that is a lot more intense than natural labor. So I'm so glad I was able to experience natural consistency. So my contractions started in the evening. We're actually doing construction on our house. So I told my husband, like, hey, like tonight is the night. So eat some food and like get some rest, right? So they were like 6 minutes apart, but consistently. And so I contacted my doula, and then it started to get more intense throughout the night. So then I ate some food, I rested, but then it started to get into that active type of delivery part where I needed to go in the shower and I was on hands and knees, and then I started timing and I was like every 2 to 3 minutes, and I was like, we need to go to the hospital because I just feel it, right? And so we were driving through like 45-mile-an-hour winds. There was no one on the road. It was like the middle of the night. And I was like, just go, just go. Like, we got to get there. I didn't even call my doctor because my last time I pushed for an hour and a half, but I did call my doula because she lived really far away. So I get to the hospital. I'm actively, having painful contractions. I remember we had signed all this paperwork before. So then that way you could just go and deliver your baby. But of course they have
No,
you like
no.
fill out more paperwork. And I'm like, like leaning on the counter, I remember. And I was like, didn't I sign all this before? So then they get me into the room, and between the 3 years of my children, the hospital now created like a triage area before you just straight go into labor and delivery. But now, so I'm in triage, and obviously I'm in active labor. So luckily I was able to get a gown on, but I wanted to labor. I wanted to labor in a tub. I kind of already did that at home. I was in the shower, but so they were like, "Oh, we have to monitor you and your baby for 30 minutes before you can labor in the tub." I didn't want to deliver in the tub at the hospital, but I wanted to like labor, right? And so I was in such active delivery that I couldn't be still. They kept being like, "Be still for the monitor." I'm like, I have to move. So I was like, forget the water. Like, something's happening. So they gave me a ball, and I remember I was on like prone, laying over the ball on my chest, kind of in hands and knees. And I was just like going in, right? Breathing, going to my happy Zen place. I remember I felt like how vomiting, but it like down there. So that I was started feeling that, and they were the nurses were yelling at me. My doctor's not in the hospital, because they're trying to like figure out what stage I'm at, and they're yelling at me, stop pushing. I was like, I can't stop anything, and so I remember they checked me, but they had some kind of false reading, and so they thought I was a lot further back than I was. My water had not broke. And then they started yelling at me, stop pushing, you're going to lacerate your cervix. And I'm just like in my Zen place. And my doula's like, like, you're going to meet your baby soon, really calm and happy. But I remember I started having those like uncontrollable kind of pushes. But right before that, um, I did scream out like like I'm gonna die, but it's just because it was that last painful like push, that last painful like kind of pain. And I remember my doula was like giving me essential oils to smell, but I do not like peppermint. And I was like, no peppermint, no peppermint. But I remember that ball really helped in being on hands and knees. So then I started having that uncontrolled push, and they literally threw a sheet over me on hands and knees, and they pushed me out of triage because they're like, things are happening. We can't be in triage. So they start calling people. And then my poor husband, who like had a very calm first birth experience, helping hold a leg and, cheering me on. Now he's in this like chaos mode, and I'm getting wheeled away. So he just starts grabbing the bags, and poor thing, he starts getting tunnel vision. So he sits down. They give him apple juice, but then soon after they're like, we got word you need to come, because basically as they're pushing me to labor and delivery, I felt the ring of fire. That is real. And then when we get to the room, I said, I think there's a head. And they literally lifted up the sheet, see the head. And then I don't know how, but somehow I go from hands and knees. They help me roll to my back, and then I push the rest of her out. And she was in her her sac, which it's like it's very rare. When you Google it, it's like 1 in 80,000 births. So my doula is like, can I take pictures? And she starts like clicking, right? But another funny thing is, while I'm on hands and knees before I push her out, when I said, I think there's a head, and we get to the room, I'm looking around and the sheet's still over me. And I said, where's my husband? And no one answers me because I didn't know he was behind me. And then I say it again, and my doula is like, oh, I think he needed to sit down because he was going to pass out. And I'm like, I'm going to pass out. I have a child halfway out of me. Anyway, so she came out, all was well. Her upgrades were good. It was neat. They like kind of opened up her sac. And then while she was on my chest, my husband did recover and come in. But breastfeeding was so much easier. I did have like a 1-degree tear. That's when the charge nurse delivered her. There was no doctor. The hospitalist did come in briefly, but I think it was like her first night on the job. So, and then luckily my doctor came in. She looked like she had been in a tropical storm, and then she just ran from her bed. But she did sew me up for my like 1-degree tear. So, and because I was such a natural, I had no IV, no nothing. I recovered so much faster. I remember because it was a tropical storm, I had her at like 3 a.m. and then the whole entire maternity, like mom and baby unit filled up that next day throughout from the tropical storm. People that were there that they weren't due then, so that pressure really did help. So because I was natural and it was a second child and she was doing so good breastfeeding, I feel like they barely checked on me. But I did have acupuncture help tonify my uterus prior to the induction visit that I did with them right when I got to like 39, 40 weeks. So then when they came at the end, you know, you breastfeed and you can feel the contractions of your uterus go back down, but they would come and like push,
Yeah.
uncomfortably push. I'm like, no, don't come back. Anyways, I remember they came and the nurses were like, I can't find your uterus. It had contracted back so fast. And they literally were like, what? Like, who are you? And I was like, oh, I did pelvic floor PT to help with this delivery, you know. And I was like, I also did acupuncture to help tonify my uterus. And that worked. And they were like, how is it all the way down there? Oh my goodness, you know, and they were just raving about that and telling other people. And then they'd come in and be like, I heard about your uterus. Like, so I'm glad I had a doula that was also a lactation specialist because breastfeeding was very difficult with my first child. Luckily, my second child, everything was a lot faster. She was hungrier. She was stronger. And even though they both had lip and tongue tie that we had to get fixed, she was able to breastfeed, you know, on demand in the hospital. And I feel like my recovery, I was able to like walk through the hospital, you know, and walk around. And my back didn't hurt like it did for so long after my epidural. So I'm so glad that I advocated for and I kind of found out like what you can say yes and no to. And because I am a healthcare professional, having my children in the hospital was important for me. But saw all the changes even within the 3 years. Like they did different lighting and different, you know, kind of sensory environment. They were allowing me to
Such the
be.
OT.
I know. They
All
were
about the sensory stuff.
yeah, they were allowing me to be in different positions as long as they could get the child safely. So I highly recommend for you all to go natural. My friend did it and she had a doula in Jacksonville soon after I had my first child. And that really intrigued me. Like, what is a doula? You know, and tell me about going natural. And yes, there, you know, that one point that I thought I was going to die, but I'd rather have that one painful kind of point versus the high, uncontrollable, more pain that Pitocin brought. I also am very thankful because I remember when they popped my first child's water, that brought the intensity way higher. So I actually never had that for my second child, thank goodness, because she was born in her sac. So I think that helped me to
That
survive.
probably did. That probably did. I know with my first, my water broke. And it was after my water broke that all of a sudden, you know, the contractions went through the roof. And they were the same as when I was induced for the other two. So yeah, and it was actually when the water broke for both of those that my contractions absolutely went through the roof. Even though I was being induced, you know, the first little while contractions weren't so bad, but after the membranes ruptured, it was unbearable to like just lay in the bed and you know have the contractions there. My first one, because I wasn't induced, I was able to walk through every contraction, and
Yes.
that's how I managed all my
Yes.
contractions. But for the other two, because I was induced, as you know, after my water broke, I'm like in the bed on a monitor and I can't move. So it was like, yeah, epidural, give me drugs, give me drugs. But yeah,
Yes.
I definitely preferred the natural birth over the induction. And so, yeah, I know what you mean.
Yes. I just couldn't get over how quick I bounced back. You know, like I'm so glad I experienced that. And I sat on a ball at home every night, with my second one, and I feel like that helped. I did lots of walking. Luckily, they were head down. I really wanted to have vaginal deliveries. Um, but I after that second birth, I mean, it did take me many hours to be like, what just happened? Because it all just kind of happened at once. There was just so much. But I was so happy that I was able to kind of see what our human body can do. Like, we are made for this. I know a lot of people have babies at birthing centers or at home, and, so really wherever you're comfortable, because that's the biggest thing is going within. Luckily, I practice meditation and mindfulness and all that, but it really is primal. You go
Hmm.
to this, like, just focus on breathing and like connecting with your body and your child, and like, we're gonna get through this. And I could, being as a pediatric OT, I legit could feel my child the second time, like, doing the spinal galant. She was helping doing the primitive reflexes coming out. Like, she was like, "Get ready, world, here I come."
So, how did you do after the birth? So, in the postpartum period there compared to the first?
So much better because the first child, I was so well, number 1, I was in pain. It hurt to sit. It hurt because I tore so bad. I had to do, like, the sitz bath. I was not the first child I'm talking about. I did not take the Motrin. I was not sleeping. I was just like, "Is he breathing?" Like, I was not focusing on my own self-care, and, I was eating and I was, like, feeding him, but I wasn't sleeping. I just didn't even know it. I was just so overwhelmed, and I feel like I had more postpartum kind of depression with him. And I wonder, I do wanna look at the research to see, because just from word of mouth, I find that more moms tell me they had it with their sons versus daughters, so
Hmm.
that's interesting. But, for the second child, because my back hurt really bad, like breastfeeding, and because of my epidural for a long time, I did have to pump for him, so I exclusively pumped for my first child. So that is just a lot of extra work of cleaning the parts and sitting there and all the things.
Hmm.
So, but for my second child, postpartum, I actually took the Motrin. Luckily, she was feeding nonstop, and so I wasn't getting plugs or any kind of like clogged ducts, so I didn't get mastitis. My milk came a lot faster. Um, I actually took it upon myself to be like, okay, game plan. We need to sleep. We need to survive and function during this. Babyhood better. So I had my son and my husband, they kind of like would sleep, in a different room, and my husband would get full amount of sleep, and he would take care and entertain the toddler, but then he would make me food. And then I kind of bunked with our new baby, right? And I took care of all the feedings and the breastfeedings. And then I also just took care of like the diaper, kind of situation. And then I would focus on myself, like showering. But when she would sleep, I would 100% put my phone in airplane mode and make that a priority. And I really did feel so much better. I probably had more milk. My quality of life was so much higher. Yeah, I was in less pain because I was keeping up with the Motrin, and I took the Colace. So things were a lot scarier or like less painful. That stool softener that they recommend. Luckily, breastfeeding was easier because of different things. I knew more what to do because I had gone to breastfeeding classes prior to my first one, and I had gone to a breastfeeding group with my first one. And then my doula did have like a postpartum visit that she kind of educated me along with that lactation information. But I think advocating, knowledge is power, knowing all that information ahead of time. But really, I've done my research in OT. on sleep. Sleep is a occupation that OTs help with, and I saw firsthand my first child how getting no sleep really impacted everything.
Hmm.
My physical,
Yeah.
mental, me doing my other occupations through the day. Like I was not able to function. I remember this quote that I gave a friend, actually the friend that introduced me to doing a doula, natural birth, but she came over to visit me and she was like, "Oh, how is sleep?" And I was like, "Oh, like 2 hours." And she was like, "Oh, at a time?" And I was like, "No, a day?" And she was like,
No, no.
so luckily, my second child, I prioritized my sleep and my own self-care, and we really kind of divvied up like who does what, not versus like we both need to wake up or we both need to help with
Yeah.
the diaper
Don't
changing.
do
Like,
that.
no, divide and conquer. So then that way I was able to really kind of get that 2 hours at a time sleep. That first child, I was like, I gotta clean, I gotta do this, I gotta, no, like priority list. If people come over, put them to work, you know? So I was like, what do I need to survive, right? We need to eat, drink, sleep, be safe, you know, all those things that I was really kind of honing in on for the second one. So,
Such the OT. Such the OT. Oh, that's hilarious. Aside from that aspect, how, because I know you had issues with your pelvic floor in the first one, and you
yes,
had issues with diastasis. How did
yes.
those go after the second?
I remember I came and saw you. And so, because I tore third degree my first time and then first the second time, it was night and day difference, right?
Hmm.
I also didn't have an infection the second time and I didn't have mastitis. So, like, just postpartum was so much better. But as far as pelvic floor, I don't remember having any urinary incontinence after the second one. And then if I did have any separation with my abs, you fixed it like in one session.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a lot of patients who have had third degree tear after having their first. And they're petrified of ever trying another vaginal birth again. Now, the one thing you didn't say is how big the first one was and how
Oh,
big the
yeah.
second one was.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, so my first child was 6'11", so petite. And then my
But you are
second,
too, so.
yes, yes. And then my second child was 7'6", so a lot bigger, and I tore less. But that's because of the myofascial pelvic floor help that I had. And then she also kind of prepared um, my pelvic floor for delivery, kind of stretching it out and ready to ready for the
Hmm.
runway, right?
Yeah. And that's the part that I thought was like just amazing, where you had a smaller baby with a third degree tear and then the larger baby with only a first degree tear. So
Yes.
and and that was after a third degree tear where you have scar tissue. And what I always tell people is the scar tissue can be like really rigid and like really immobile, or it can move with you. We're not going to make scar tissue melt, or make scar tissue go away. We're just going to make it work with you. And that's the proof in the pudding there of a third degree tear being okay for another vaginal delivery, even for a larger child, that came much faster.
Right.
So it was.
Very, very fast. Yes.
Hmm.
I literally had 3 uncontrollable pushes with my second child, and I pushed for an hour and a half with my first child. So that's epidural not feeling, or I felt pressure, but and then natural, like this baby is coming. So I
Yeah.
really do feel like your body knows what's like coming in and out, you know what I mean? And it's
Hmm.
less is better, in my opinion, from my experience. And I did go out and advocate to the OB world after, like, you need to require pelvic floor before, during, after.
After.
This is what acupuncture did to help me.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need Pitocin and Cervidil. We need just acupuncture. It was like the most simplest little points. And then it literally like stirred things up in 24 hours or less,
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I can't recommend it enough. I tell everyone I know because I've been through it all, and I'm like, you should look into this. I'm just so thankful for you coming into my life when you did. I needed you. Um, I feel like a lot of people I know were or are having fertility issues, and you have given them the gift. I feel like I'm going to cry. You have given them the gift to have a child without doing like IVF or different things. And it's as simple as just for me moving my uterus over to the middle. Like I had no idea it had contracted back and was like off to the side. But simple little things, and it's not painful. It has changed so much of my pelvic floor. Just don't be scared to go see a pelvic floor. It is not normal to have urinary incontinence or different things. And as we age and go through our lives, we all need to see pelvic floor PTs, OTs, pelvic floor therapists. Um, really should be a requirement. So if you haven't gone to see one, you need to, because they are here to help you have higher quality of life, right?
Yeah.
In every
Yeah.
way.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your stories, Amanda. I
Of
greatly
course.
appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure, sure. All right. So I'll see you next time on the postpartum years. Bye.
Bye.